Welcome to Fantasy Football by Committee. The show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Instead of doing trending players right away, I want to do this. Let's talk about the biggest injury of the week, and it happened a while ago. It seems like a week ago already. So Joe Burrow hurt, out for season, obviously. Just sucks. I mean, he started the year so poorly, finally starting to play better. Out for the season, wrist surgery. I believe it's technically the wrist. Hurt a pop, couldn't grip a ball. Not fun to see, not fun for him. Hoping he gets a speedy recovery. But for fantasy now, you've been sitting on it all week. All weekend long, you had a dud at your quarterback spot because I assume you started Joe Burrow. Most likely, you likely didn't have a better situation there. But now you're just trying to figure out how do you replace Joe Burrow. Let's talk about some people you can replace Joe Burrow with. I wrote down 3 names of players who are out there in more leagues than not. So I looked at players 50% ownership or less in Sleeper. Again, if you're on ESPN, if you're on Yahoo, there's a lot more names owned in less than 50% that I would go after. But the number one player owned in only 49% of leagues. He's been up and down a lot this season. He's been turning in some pretty strong performances recently, though. Baker Mayfield, he's owned in only 49% of Sleeper fantasy leagues, and he's been playing pretty well. Obviously, just had a tough matchup with the 49ers. Next 4 games are the Colts, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Packers. There's certainly a lot to like about that. So just the fact that he's been playing well already, now he's playing some matchups against teams that aren't necessarily going to destroy his offensive line. And there's very beatable matchups down the field as well for Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and company. So I think Baker Mayfield is a very, very safe option for you as a replacement for Joe Burrow. Next player owned in only 40% coming off an injury and a bye week, Derek Carr, owned in 40% of Sleeper fantasy leagues. So he had a wombo combo of injuries. He had a shoulder injury and he suffered a concussion when he left the game. From all accounts, shoulder injury, good to go, no worries. He's still in concussion protocol, but again, he has a full week. He doesn't play on a short week, so he has a full week yet. He should be able to get back in there. Owned in only 40%. He has been getting better and better and better for fantasy as the season goes along. And his next 4 games are the Falcons, the Lions, the Panthers, and the Giants. A lot to like there. The Saints offense should get humming against those matchups. I like that quite a bit. And there's other names I think I may prefer to this final player, but again, maybe you play in a league with some pretty sharp people. Maybe you play in a 16-team or 14-team, a deep league where there's not many options out there. So I wanted an unowned option for you. Again, 0% owned in Sleeper fantasy leagues. And that's Jake Browning, obviously the guy who's replacing Joe Burrow for the Cincinnati Bengals, could be the guy replacing Joe Burrow for your fantasy team as well. I don't mind him. He used his legs a little bit. I think 40 rushing yards. Obviously, he's got some good receiving weapons. He should be getting T. Higgins back. That helps as well. So I don't mind him whatsoever. I think he'll be serviceable. Another player out there, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, maybe you look at him. Look to see if Kyler Murray's out there in your league. There's still some leagues where for some reason he's floating out there. But I think you can do worse than Jake Browning. I think he's okay. This first matchup sucks. So if you don't have to start him this week, I would love to pump the brakes and see what you got in him a little bit. He plays the Steelers this week. Don't love that. Don't love inexperienced quarterbacks coming in against a shit ton of pressure. But it is what it is. After that, he's got the Jags, the Colts, the Vikings. Things should get a little bit easier for him after the fact. However, Steelers are going to blitz the hell out of him. We'll see how he reacts to said blitz. We know the Bengals are incapable of drawing up protection to keep their quarterbacks upright. They got the dogs up front. They just can't schematically figure out how to slide protection, or Joe Burrow decides not to do it. It's one or the other. I tend to believe Joe Burrow's capable of making adjustments at the line of scrimmage, but we'll see. But I say that to say Steelers going to blitz the piss out of him. If he doesn't react well, the Vikings for sure will do that. Jaguars, I think, would do that. Colts, we'll see. So, if he looks really, really bad this week, you may need to find another option. But for now, if you're super desperate, if you have been rolling with only Joe Burrow, you got a little bit too confident, too big for your britches. You thought, I got Joe Burrow, I'm good. Nobody on waivers. Jake Browning's at least going to be on waivers for you. So you can do that. But like I said, Baker Mayfield's probably my top option, owned in less than half of leagues. Derek Carr, certainly people aren't going to be rushing to go pick up Derek Carr after a couple of injuries, and he's not even cleared concussion protocol yet. So I think that's a good option for you. And then Jake Browning. But yeah, let me know if you're watching this live. Let me know in the chat which one of those guys you prefer. If you're watching this after the fact, let me know in the comments which of those guys you prefer. If you have Joe Burrow, do you have a backup option? What are you doing? I would love to know. Let me just look at some other quarterback options really quick, just so I can give you some live, again, Monday morning ownership percentages for these guys. Okay. Here we go. So other possible options out there for you. Like I said, Kyler Murray's floating out there in too many leagues. Yeah, Stu, I feel you. I feel you. Kyler Murray's owning 76% of sleeper leagues. So on ESPN, that's for sure less. Yahoo, that's for sure less. So definitely go check that out. Ralph, should we be worried about Josh Jacobs? I trade Kyron Williams and Tank Dell for him, and he hasn't produced. That's a tough answer just because, you have to manage expectations, I suppose. I'm not worried about him. Do I think he's a clear-cut RB1? No. So it kind of depends on where your expectations are, I suppose. But he's going to get a big workload, and you're hoping he falls in the end zone. The offensive line isn't very good, but I think Josh Jacobs will get better than what he showed like this week. But yeah, I think he's a low-end RB1, high-end RB2. If that scares you off of him, then yes, I would be worried, I suppose. Other quarterbacks, Sam Howell's owned in 77%. Brock Purdy's owned in 80%. Again, sleeper fantasy. Josh Dobbs, if he's out there, I would love for you to pick up Josh Dobbs over the other players I already named. He's owned in 71%. The thing with him is he has a good matchup against Chicago this week, and then he has a bye week. So, twofold here. If you pick him up, you're going to have a backup plan for week 13 when he doesn't have a game. However, if you pick up somebody like Browning, like I said, and he really sucks, and you're like, I need a backup option, then look to see if the Josh Dobbs owner drops him during week 13. Maybe you can snag him and then have him for the end of the season stretch, which is the Raiders, Bengals, Lions, and Packers. Certainly like that. Justin Jefferson should be back at the very least by week 14, maybe week 12, though. But yeah, if Josh Dobbs is out there, definitely go for him. I don't really want Jordan Love. I don't want Stafford given the Cooper Kupp injury and given his schedule. Don't like that. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 11% ownership. Steelers, not the easiest matchup. He then has the Broncos, Rams, Jaguars, and Bears. So I think that could get better for him. I don't love Bryce Young. I don't love Gardner Minshew. You could do worse than Minshew, but don't love it. Russell Wilson's owning 51%. I don't like his matchup this week against the Browns, but immediately after that, I think you're good. He's got the Texans, Chargers, Lions, Patriots, Chargers. So if you can just get through this week, if you aren't in a must-win spot this week, then Russell Wilson, 51% ownership, all of a sudden becomes a pretty solid option for you as well, I think. But yeah, I don't think I'm going for anybody else. I think that's it. I don't need a Steelers guy. I don't need a Patriots guy, a Jets guy. I don't need Geno. Yeah, I think that's it. If you have Joe Burrow, I'm sorry. But those are the guys I would be targeting to replace him if you do not already have a replacement.